AM Impact on Your Health is sponsored by Dennis J. Courtney, MD, Director of the Courtney Medical Group, located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray, Pennsylvania. For more information or to make an appointment, call 724-942-3002. That's 724-942-3002 for Dennis J. Courtney, MD.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to AM Impact on Your Health. AM Impact on Your Health, for every day our goal is to have you learn at least one thing to help you live better and longer. AM Impact on Your Health is heard each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 9 o'clock. I'm Dr. Dennis Courtney, and I'm with you each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 9. AM Impact on Your Health, where each day you'll find current medical news, knowledgeable guests, fascinating health topics, and of course, where we do encourage you to call in to join in today. Well, he was with us last week. I always enjoy when this gentleman comes. He's so knowledgeable on all things colon, and today we switch a bit. Because he has a very fond relationship between his ability to treat things with diet, which is of course colon related, and things that you wouldn't think necessarily could respond to diet alone. We're talking today with Konstantin Monostyrsky, who's going to be telling us how you correct, how you prevent, or restore the health of someone with diabetes. Now, this, I'm sure you're going to want to listen to Konstantin today. Now, in the course of our discussion with him, you want to call in to ask a question or make a comment. That number, of course, is and always will be 412-825-6262. That's 412-825-6262. Konstantin Monostyrsky, our featured guest today. Now, up-and-coming guests, well, look, we are in the gun lap. We are coming around that home stretch in the month of November. Wednesday's show, well, it'll probably be myself. I don't know if I can launch a program I want to launch for the 30th or not, but of course it'll be open to you if I don't take it over. And then we turn that page, because we turn it in the month of December. In December, we've got our lineup already beginning with, on Friday, David Brownstein will be here talking about conventional therapies that don't work and alternative ones that do. David Brownstein, our guest for Friday. Then on the 7th, next Wednesday, that'll be Susan Smith-Jones is coming back to talk about the holidays, a different perspective, a different take. The last time, how to prevent weight gain. Now, how to prevent hangovers. She'll talk to you about the natural ways to do that. And in the month, we'll move on rather briskly after that. Of course, at some point, I'm looking more than likely on the 21st, we'll have to have our famous Christmas show of the altercation with an elf. I'll get into that some other time. MCG testing is fully engaged and underway. Of course, you know that to be the way to find out the status of the coronary arteries in a way that is non-invasive at all and highly accurate. How much plaque are in those arteries? That's something very important to know, especially if quite a bit of plaque is there. You would not know it is there unless you had the severe symptoms of angina or something like that, or maybe you had the misfortune of already having your symptoms and winding up in an emergency room and ultimately to the cath lab that awaited you to get you reversed from a pretty serious situation at that time. Of course, cardiac catheterization is the gold standard method for detecting the presence and the amount of plaque inside of coronary arteries, but now we do it one better in a completely non-invasive way through this thing called MCG testing. Of course, that stands for multifunctional cardiogram. We're able to detect the level of plaque inside of those arteries while you lie on a bed with completely closed with the electronic leads placed around each wrist and a clip, and then one lead off the left side of the chest. 6 minutes later, it's all over. In that 6 minutes, you have been tested 5 separate times, once every 82 seconds, and we then send that information off to be compared to a database of 42,000 plus patients. Each and every one of those patients, yes, they've had the MCG test, but they also have had a full-blown cardiac catheterization because they are in the sicky category. They have pretty good coronary artery disease. How this machinery is able to assess the status of your coronary arteries via not penetrating the body in any way, utilizing electrodes and something the like, I really don't know how it's done. I just know it is done, and that we're able to tell you how much plaque you have in those arteries with a 91% accuracy. Now, this is something completely insurance covered. Many of you have already taken us up on our offer. We started offering this testing here in our office last February, and up till now, just about coming up on 100 have been tested. And each and every test determines whether or not you need to have the test done sooner or later based on how you score. If you have very little to no coronary plaque, you'll need to retest once a year. If you have a moderate amount, that's once every 6 months. If you got a tremendous amount, that's once every 3 months, while we put a program into play to correct and reverse this plaque, which I think is the biggest advantage of all. Okay, so MCG testing now available. In the month of December, we have our December dates. The Monroeville folks, we're coming out there on the 6th of December and the 20th of December. Whichever one of those dates work for you, please give us a call and schedule at 724-942-3002. Don't actually call the MedHealth Services office. They're getting, by the way, you are calling them. They're saying they're getting barraged with calls. They don't really know how to answer them because they can't schedule it. So if you think you'd like to take me up on this offer, give us a call here, 724-942-3002. We'll give you a time slot for either of those 2 dates out of Monroeville. And, of course, the McMurray office is going to be testing on the 8th of December. And likewise, if you're in that area geographically pleasing to you in the South Hills, then give us the call at the same number, 724-942-3002, and we'll schedule it for December the 8th for the McMurray office. MCG testing well underway now that we actually have procured the device, and I literally share this device with a colleague of mine. He gets it half of the month, I get the other half of the month, and it works out rather well. But the machine is in office, and we do possess it. It is in our ownership. Okay, enough about MCG testing. Speaking of initials, there's another G, HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin, the earliest detectable way to ascertain if a cancer is on board, utilizing the trophoblastic theory, suggesting that all cancer cells are derived from trophoblasts. And of course, trophoblasts are those cells which make HCG in minute amounts nonetheless, except in the gonads, where of course during pregnancy, this is the pregnancy hormone, folks. But pregnancy is one thing, having cancer is another, and to learn that you can detect the presence of the cancer in a cluster of cells, of cancer cells, as little as 12 cells, ranks this as one of the most sensitive ways of detecting cancer that I know of. Anyway, to find out more about the theory behind this, if you're interested, go on to the archives of djcmd.com, djcmd.com, opening page. Click on archives, and then you'll get a list of all the radio shows we've done here, literally since 2006. That's quite a few. But look for the chronological listing there, and the shows from October 10th and October 12th. On the 10th, we were with Emil Shandel. He runs the laboratory testing station down there in Fort Lauderdale, American Metabolic Labs. And on 12th, we spent a lot more time talking about those individuals who more than likely should consider doing HCG testing. If you'd like to re-listen to those, hope you enjoyed it. Also, hope you enjoyed the repeat show we did on Friday with Daniel Brinkley. I promised to bring him back right after the beginning of the year and discuss the Twilight Brigade and his epic saga of near-death experiences, which allowed him to write 2 previous books before I even met him. Many of my listeners have told me, yeah, I've got his books. Well, I never did, but the guy is intriguing. I hope you enjoy the repeat we did on Friday. Okay, let's wrap this segment of the show up. Let's do this. We're going to take a short break. In the interim, I'm going to New York to find Konstantin Monostyrsky. We're going to be talking about a unique non-colon issue today that he's absolutely on top of, how to reverse diabetes via the diet. Go figure. Be right back.
This is Dennis J. Courtney, MD. Have you become confused about how best to manage your health? It's no wonder. It seems that every time you turn on the television or radio, another expert has yet another suggestion for you to follow that seems to be reasonable enough, but no matter how dutifully you follow the instruction, it just doesn't quite produce the results that you are looking for. If this confusion sounds familiar to you, give us a call at the Center for Complementary Health, where we'll make some sense of the confusion based on a blending of traditional and alternative medicine that we've been perfecting over the last 7 years. We offer metabolic nutrition testing, immune system repair, natural hormone replacement therapy, chelation therapy, cutting-edge allergy correction, and a host of other safe and effective alternative therapies.
Dennis J. Courtney, MD, is located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray. Phone 724-942-3002.
Honey, just got the word. The company's new health plan has a $5,000 deductible. We have to make sure nobody gets sick this year. Remember what those doctor's visits cost for last year's colds and flu? Oh, sorry, I gotta go. Love you.
We can do this. We can cut the fast food lunches. Soda, that's a lot of sugar. We could all take that evening walk. And hey, I heard a program about fruit. Fruit of the spirit. What did they say? 1 ounce, the equivalent of 5 servings of fruits with herbs and minerals. We could add some to our breakfast protein shakes. Fruit of the Spirit is unique whole fruit puree. Fruit of the Spirit contains fresh fruits native to the Holy Land and alkalizing minerals from the Dead Sea with no added sugar. Fruit of the Spirit is a unique product from 5 years of work from science-based nutritional experts. Call 1-800-442-3793 for a special promotional offer. Fruit of the Spirit, a blessing for your good health. Fruit of the Spirit, convenient, affordable, and delicious. That's 1-800-442-3793. Call them now, 1-800-442-3793.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back once again to A&M Impacts on Your Health. Heard here in KHB 620 each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 9 o'clock. We're here today on a Monday morning version of the show, post-Thanksgiving Day show. Hope your Thanksgiving went well for you, ladies and gentlemen. And for those brave souls who are out in the woods right now, well, you'll have to listen to this show on the internet, which will be waiting you when you come back with your deer in place. Today, however, we're with a friend of ours, a very knowledgeable friend. He's been talking about issues involving colon and digestive disorders since he emerged and came onto our show. Turns out, what I thought was the correct order was the incorrect order. Way preceding this, according to Konstantin Monostyrsky, has been his interest in the subject of diabetes, probably because he suffered from it himself. Let's now return to New York and our guest today, Konstantin Monostyrsky. Say good morning, hello, and welcome back, Konstantin.
Good morning, Dr. Courtney. Good morning to everybody in Pittsburgh. Thank you again for inviting me in.
Always an open invitation to you, Konstantin. And, of course, as we were talking off air, it would only make sense that one of the first things that you ever were interested in medically, because you have a medical background, you went to medical school in Russia, and then left it with a degree in pharmacy, got very high-tech when you came to this country at first, but you got extremely ill. Why don't you take up the story at that point, because it's because, I'm guessing, of your illness that moved you into something maybe you never thought you ever were going to do in your whole life.
Yeah, that is correct, and it's unfortunately a very sad story on one hand and very inspiring on the other. Being in high-tech industry, you look at high-tech industry leaders, people like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and you want to be like them, very energetic, high-powered, healthy. And so what do we have in this country associated with health? Vegetarian diet. The late Steve Jobs was a vegetarian. He was actually a vegan. And so when I wanted to give myself the boost of energy, boost of stamina, great memory, recall, good looks. You know, what did in the 90s, you went to Barnes & Noble and you picked up the book that promised you the most. And I got hooked on a book which was called Fit for Life by Harvey and Marilyn Diamond. This was back in 1990. And I read it, and it was very high on vegetarian lifestyle, and I willingly embraced that approach. And unfortunately, 4 years later, I was 24 pounds more overweight. I was clinically depressed pretty much most of the time. I was suffering from a whole range of problems. And one of the most difficult for me was carpal tunnel syndrome, so I couldn't type. And for somebody in high-tech industry where everything, your whole day is around computers, email, programming, it was devastating. I could barely drive. I have to actually use my knee to support the steering wheel because of the tremendous pain in my hands.
Wow.
And I kept unloading on more juices, more fruits, more vegetables, more bread, more rice, more pasta. And it was getting worse and worse and worse until 1996. I literally collapsed in a car. Fortunately, I was standing on a red light. That was a very severe case of hypoglycemia, so I didn't know it at that time. And I essentially started my quest on finding out what ails me, why I'm so miserable, why I'm so overweight, why I cannot sleep, why I couldn't sleep. And my antidote for not sleeping was alcohol, so I was drinking quite a lot just to put myself to sleep.
Another carbohydrate, I might add.
Exactly, and not only that, alcohol is tremendous stimulant of insulin secretion, and the major problem for everybody with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, which I was affected by, is a very high level of insulin, and insulin is really a stress hormone. It wasn't originally or evolutionarily intended for assimilating about 400 or 500 grams of carbohydrates most Americans consume today. It was essentially intended to manage fight-or-flight response and provide body with a surge of necessary energy. And so being a stress hormone, the reason, pretty much everybody with diabetes or type 2 diabetes, especially people on insulin, they're subject to rages. They're very stressed out continuously, very irritable. Irritation is one of the primary symptoms of type 2 diabetes. And I wish to remind to everybody, type 2 diabetes is not a disease. It is a syndrome, meaning a collection of symptoms that determines the fact that you have this condition. And so hyperinsulinemia is one of the conditions that predetermines the fact that you have type 2 diabetes. And so essentially when I started to investigate what ails me, I very, very quickly realized that I'm having problems with over-consuming carbohydrates because human body isn't designed on a perpetual level to absorb that many carbohydrates. And that normal level for a person is about maybe 150 to 100 grams per day. And that's for somebody who is very physically active, who is still under 50, because as people get older, their glucose, their need for glucose reduces. It is also actually it's interesting. People think that for physical work you need more carbohydrates. Actually, it's the reverse. For mental work you need more carbohydrates. And it's one of the reasons why scientists and young people who are in college are usually skinny, and once they graduate or they abandon their science, they gain weight right away because they continue on the same diet. And 2 years down the road, my blood sugar was stabilized. I was feeling much better. My carpal tunnel syndrome had gone. I had no clue why, but it did. So I was very happy. And gradually, I actually, because of those 2 years, was being on that quest to find a recovery, because of being in such a poor shape, because of insomnia, because of my very irritable dimension to my character, which wasn't really a part of me. I was always very relaxed and easygoing. It damaged my high-tech business tremendously. I closed my company in 1998 and switched over completely into medical writing and medical research. And since then, I am involved in this, and I'm very lucky. I was able to attain a fairly decent living by selling my books. My first 2 books were in Russian language, specifically dedicated to the issue of diabetes. My second book, is, in fact, was called How to Overcome Metabolic Disorders. And so now I'm returning to the subject, and I'll be working more and more. And the reason I kind of got deterred into colorectal disorders, or digestive disorders in general, because it is very difficult to take a 55 or 50 or even 45-year-old person with type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes and switch them over to a diet that is low in carbohydrates. And the reason why it is difficult is because our bodies adapt to a predominant diet. Everything adapts to it, the digestive system, endocrine system. And so when you suddenly switch somebody into a different style of diet and you suddenly reduce carbohydrates, people do experience a lot of problems: dehydration, anemia, malnutrition, constipation, indigestion, dyspepsia, ulcers, terrible headaches, insomnia. And so for me to say to somebody, hey, listen, you can recover from diabetes, you can normalize your weight, but unfortunately I do not know how to do it, except I only know what to eat. It wasn't going to work. So that's why I took the tremendous detour, almost what's now 6 years old, and I wrote 2 more books on the subject. One is Fiber Menace, and another one is Gut Sense. And so now I'm working on my third book on the subject. It's called Performance Nutrition, The Art of Eating Without Harm. And it will specifically deal with the diabetes and prediabetes because, as you know, 105 million Americans, meaning every second adult, is today affected by prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. 25 million diabetics with type 2, about 10% of those people with type 1, and 85 million people with prediabetes, meaning a condition that precedes diabetes is more likely will turn into diabetes by the time type 2 diabetes, by the time a person reaches about 45, 50 years of age.
Now, is it your message, because I although I haven't really heard you say it in that way, but you can't help but listen to your own personal situation, which, from all practical purposes, I think has been reversed completely. You are not a diabetic any longer?
No, not any longer. Again, if someone is affected by type 1 diabetes, it is a technically degenerative condition, meaning person's pancreas is no longer producing sufficient amount of insulin to support even a very moderate carbohydrate intake, so the person becomes insulin dependent. Type 2 diabetes is insulin, it's not dependent upon insulin. Your body is still producing sufficient amount of insulin to support a reasonable diet. So if you change your diet and lifestyle to such that your body doesn't have to work overtime to absorb that excessive glucose and galactose and fructose that you are consuming with food, then your blood sugar will stabilize fairly fast, your level of insulin will drop down fairly fast, and all the side effects, bad effects of over-consuming carbohydrates and excessive production of insulin by your own body, they will abate fairly quickly. It takes several months to normalize, and you start gradually losing weight. So because it is a syndrome, because it is not a disease, it is fairly, it's very easy to reverse, and it is preventable. And even I was working with people with a very, very late stage type 2 diabetes, and it's just like magic. The moment they change their diet toward the diet that is not overloading their body with excess carbohydrates, they stabilize very, very quickly. And you know that type 2 diabetes, or any kind of diabetes, has a very profound effect on cardiovascular system for the same reason: excessive glucose and excessive insulin. And so it is more likely that people with type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes will die from a heart attack or stroke related to excessive blood pressure, to hypertension. And the most beautiful thing about it is your blood pressure normalizes also very, very quickly. Atherosclerosis begins to reverse itself. So it's like magic, and there isn't really that much to it. It's all dietary change. Again, that said, it's not that simple to actually change your diet from heavily based on carbohydrates to a diet that is moderate in carbohydrates. And a lot of people ask me this question: is it like what you recommend is like Atkins? To everybody, what I recommend has nothing to do whatsoever with Dr. Atkins' diet. Dr. Atkins' diet was very problematic for a lot of people. It works great for somebody who is young, for people in their 20s and 30s and even early 40s. Past 45, 50, it's almost impossible to stay on. It's very difficult to get good results and has tremendous amount of side effects. And in fact, Dr. Atkins himself, as he got older, he experienced the full brunt of those side effects, and as we know, he passed away being clinically obese, having cardiomyopathy, and lots and lots of problems. And also his cause of death was an accidental fall.
And he fell out of his office.
Yeah, and actually, I think this is a made-up story, but regardless, post-mortem, which was published, demonstrated a tremendous number of problems in his
I
body.
remember hearing the
and it was very, very sad.
So then, you appear to have like the epitome, your example, your own personal example. I mean, I don't know very many diabetics that lose control of their vehicle and pass out at a red light. So, as far as type 2 diabetes goes, you absolutely reach the highest level of a type 2 diabetic there really is, and yet you turned yourself around. So
yes, it was it was kind of a very bizarre story. Back in 90s, or in those times when I was experiencing those problems, a predominant way of determining type 2 diabetes was fasting blood glucose test. And unfortunately, fasting blood glucose test doesn't really work well for young people, and I was at that time only 42 years of age. And the reason it's not working because when you present yourself to a doctor's office and you don't eat anything for 12, 14, 15 hours, so you're trying to be a nice patient. If you are told to come in on empty stomach, you do come on empty stomach. And unfortunately, for younger people who have a very well-optimized digestion and who are still fairly active, when they present themselves to a physician office in this condition, they usually have not a very high level of glucose, but very low, hypoglycemia. And so every time I went for testing, I was told the same. You look good. There is nothing wrong with you. Your blood sugar is normal despite all. And people, when they're young, they still look good. And I wrote about this back in 2000, and this specific problem was in fact recognized by American Diabetic Association. And in April of last year, in 2010, they published new guidelines, and they said, well, you no longer can use fasting blood glucose test effectively because it misses pretty much everyone younger with type 2 diabetes, and it over-diagnoses older people because older people have a natural tendency to have elevated blood sugar even when they're not diabetic. And they propose to use so-called A1C, HbA1c,
hemoglobin A1C.
Hemoglobin A1C blood test as more objective because it doesn't reflect your fasting blood level, but it does reflect your historical blood sugar, and it pretty much reflects the span of your average blood sugar over the last 60 to 90 days. And after that tiny little change, which I was advocating 10 years ago, we had an estimate for about 80 million people affected by prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. And that estimate was brought up to almost 105 million people. Just one little change in testing. It's much more objective. So if you do experience all the primary symptoms of type 2 diabetes, I speak to listeners, which are dry mouth, sudden fatigue, excessive urination, insomnia, unexplained weight gain, you should get tested. You should get A1C test. You should not rely on either urine test or fasting blood glucose test.
Now, interesting that you pointed out that the professional organizations recommended a number of years ago that you do not base the diagnosis on a normal fasting blood sugar. Yet, I will tell you that out in my area of the country, here in western Pennsylvania, it's still the fasting blood sugar test that's being used. Very few, if any, doctors order hemoglobin A1C. And in an office practice that I have where I get one on every patient, I thought I uncovered a new syndrome I called a closet diabetic.
Exactly.
Where your fasting blood sugar, I'm looking at that, that's completely normal. Yet their hemoglobin A1C can be quite deranged. And I would have a discussion about diet, but You say, and I've seen some very high hemoglobin A1Cs, which would suggest someone is not just a closet diabetic, it's just that their homeostatic mechanisms overnight bring them into a pseudo-normal range, fooling everybody to think that they have a normal blood sugar when in fact they are very deranged and they are full-blown diabetics.
That is correct, and that's exactly the problem I run into, and that's why nobody was able to help me, because the guidelines were not there. And by the way, it's not just in your area. Even in this area, it's exactly the same. It's still, even most doctors now routinely order A1C. They don't really pay much attention to it, regardless of what the guidelines are. And it's very unfortunate, and that's why so many people, by the time they actually go into a late stage of that condition, it's much more difficult to reverse because they're in a very significant decline, unfortunately.
Now, in your case, where you've written about your diabetic experience, is it your first two books that you went into great length about how you reversed it, or will it be in your new book, the one that's up and coming, that you're going to describe how to do this?
The up-and-coming book is addressed to younger people. It is much easier, at least for somebody like me, to help younger people from becoming pre-diabetic or diabetic or gaining weight. And when I say young, I mean it's anywhere from 18 to about maybe 45.
Yeah,
50.
please. It's youthful. 45 is
useful. You're right. So it's not for teenagers, it's not for toddlers, it's for somebody between ages of 20 and 45, 50. And it will work for everyone, so it's easier to help people in this category than. And unfortunately, a lot of people who already have a diagnosed condition, they actually don't want to read books. They prefer medicalized treatment. They prefer to take medication to normalize their blood sugar. And in fact, if you do take medication to normalize your blood sugar, you actually do not in any way eliminate or prevent the major underlying reason behind your condition. All you do, you just attain a better looking blood test. And but all the symptoms, secondary and primary of your underlying condition, they remain there, your diet remains there. So using medication to treat type 2 diabetes is the most dangerous thing, because essentially what it does is your disease continues unabated, your body is continuing to incur problems, but you believe, and unfortunately your doctor believes, that you don't have any problems.
Treating the lab test, making the blood test the goal and not the patient. This is the big blemish on the medical profession, treating the labs.
And by the way, don't blame doctors that much, Dr. Courtney. I think patients are as much at fault, even more at fault than doctors, because patients prefer to maintain, most people prefer to maintain exact same lifestyle they were having. They don't want to make any changes, and they prefer to take pills, lifestyle pills, in a false belief that actually they can maintain the exact same lifestyle and use pills to be in great health. Unfortunately, it's wrong, and I don't really blame doctors that much. Absolute majority of doctors that I meet, they say, well, Konstantin, I try my best, but unfortunately, I don't have time to sit down and counsel a patient for hours and hours and hours and deal with every little problem that they're experiencing with their diet. And in fact, I have a solution. I think it should be done on a national level. There should be a program that people can go on the internet. They can enter their profile. Based on their profile, they can get like training videos. And I was trying to convince a lot of people to get this program done, but it's very expensive. And so it is on my agenda. And I think that will help to save a lot of problems. Also, unfortunately, as you know, insurance compensation is not really targeted toward prevention. It's targeted mostly towards treatments. And again, physicians are not, physicians are more or less forced by the insurance system itself to prescribe medication rather than to counsel patients. And since you have very little time to devote to each patient, considering your workload, and you need to use auxiliaries, extensions, nurses, dietitians to do that, insurance companies are not willing to pay for that kind of counseling. And I think the key to diabetes prevention, the key to diabetes recovery, the key to eliminating this dreadful condition is in prevention, in lifestyle changes. And lifestyle changes require a lot of counseling, and only patients are in a position to make these life changes. No matter what you're going to tell to the person, they're not going to do it by themselves. They will say, "Doctor, give me some pill. I just want to have what I want. I want to have what I'm having. Just give me some pills so my blood test comes okay."
Okay, so setting the stage for if somebody's listening to us right now and they feel, "My God, he's talking about me. It sounds just like me." Then what would be? Because I think you could have a completely large tome and book written about this, especially your up-and-coming book where you're going to be working mainly with the youthful 45 and under age group. But if we could tick off 5, 6, 7 starter set directions, rules to follow, what would you list out as the first 5 things that somebody needs to do to start on a straight and narrow path toward reversing diabetes?
Very, very simple. Pick up any book on low carbohydrate diet. Don't go into any extremes like paleo diets, just any low carbohydrate lifestyle diet. Switch over to that diet and it will immediately reduce your overall consumption of carbohydrates from whatever it is today you average to maybe 200, 150 grams a day, and you will already be making tremendous improvements. It's number 1. Number 2, nothing sweet by mouth. All of those diets, regardless of the source, that sell substitute foods, artificial foods with artificial or even natural sweeteners, non-sugar sweeteners, they are a disaster. For as long as something sweet enters your mouth, your pancreas, our body secretes insulin into a response of eating, to the fact of eating, and to the taste of sugar. It takes a long time for the sugar actually to get into your bloodstream for a full brunt of insulin. So if you would like to stabilize and normalize your pancreas from over-secreting insulin, which is a real culprit of diabetes. It's not so much even excessive blood sugar, it's insulin that is a culprit. You have to stop eating anything that is sweet. That's number 2. Number 3, profoundly reduce your fiber consumption because dietary fiber is only a portion of digestible carbohydrates. So if you're trying to attain a recommended 20-30 grams of fiber a day from natural foods, that means that you need to consume 200 to 300 grams of fruits and vegetables only to gain that fiber, and that's before everything else that you consume without fiber. And number 4, stop drinking water in excess. The idea of 8 glasses of water on top of all other fluids that you're consuming with food and beverages is a crazy one. It leads to a profuse urination and to very unstable blood chemistry and increases appetite tremendously. So there's 4 factors: reduced carbohydrate diet, elimination of everything sweet, including artificial sweeteners, which are even more harmful, a reduction of fiber, and a reduction of consumable fluids will already set you up for improvement. And when you do this, you have to be careful. If you're already taking a blood sugar reducers, you have to make sure that you reduce the dose, because then you can enter in a different extreme, and that's hypoglycemia. And that's actually the subject of my third book, and first in English the book was called Fiber Menace. It was specifically dealing with those 2 issues: fiber reduction and reduction of fluids consumption. And these were 2 most difficult and challenging parts of overcoming overcoming the diet that was high in carbohydrates, because usually when people switch over, especially people past 45, 50, they switch over from a high fiber diet to low fiber diet, they experience a fairly devastating problems with moving bowels, they experience constipation. And so I couldn't really even touch that subject before figuring out that. And you can just go on my website, godsense.org. It's absolutely free. It has full text on my second book, which specifically deals with constipation. And just read on that, and this will help you, along with any book on low carbohydrate lifestyle, that will help you to overcome the side effects.
Now, you've laid some bombshell stuff on us right now, and I got to come back and pick up, especially on, okay, after you bought the book, and I guess the book that you don't want to get is Atkins' Diet. Okay, that's one of those extreme books.
It is extreme, yes. South Beach is probably a fairly acceptable, it's a reasonable diet. It's written by a cardiovascular doctor. He is very reasonable. It's not as excessive as Dr. Atkins' diet. And also, one of the craziest idea about Atkins' diet, which was actually the book, which was ejected by the new team that wrote the new Atkins diet book, was that you can have unlimited fat. You cannot have unlimited fat. Forget about it. Each gram of fat contains 9 calories, and if you start consuming unlimited fat, while fats are very healthy and very important, fats are essential for normal health, especially digestive health. If you don't consume any fats, you do not digest fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K, and respectively, you go blind, you become osteoporotic. Without vitamin E, you develop some cancers, and without vitamin K, your blood stops coagulating, so you do have to consume fats to assimilate those vitamins. Also, you have to consume fats to assimilate minerals that give strength to your bones, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, and so forth. But you cannot consume fats in excess. Another very important function of fats: if you do not consume fats, your gallbladder stops functioning, accumulates too much bile, bile forms into salt forms into
stones.
And so you will, at one point or another, you will face a surgery to remove your gallbladder with accompanying gallstones. So it's very, very important to consume fat, but not in the excess. And also, when we talk about fat consumption, it is critical to consume animal fats. Forget about vegetable fats. Vegetable fats are not compatible with human physiology. Unfortunately, you do need some fats that are called polyunsaturated, and people used to get all those fats from dairy and from meat because ages ago cows used to graze on regular grass, so they would have a very high level of polyunsaturated fats in meat fat, in fat that accompanies meat, and dairy products. Unfortunately, today most livestock consumes essentially corn, and so they develop mostly saturated fats, and also because they are not moving out, because they are in heated premises. Those three conditions: artificial foods, lack of movement, and heated premises creates a condition where predominant fat in meat and dairy is saturated fats. So to compensate for that, cod liver oil, 2 teaspoons a day of cod liver oil, and I know somebody is very much against it. Well, if you consume a lot of vegetable fats, you may get away without cod liver oil. But if you don't, you do need to have an intake of essential fatty acids, polyunsaturated fats, and they only come from those sources. It's a very, very interesting kind of thing. We are not only, when we deal with those diseases, we're not only dealing with just disease itself, but also with evolutionary nutrition, with forensic nutrition, with so many issues. I love the subject.
Paleolithic diet. Okay, got to come back to this one here because you laid a bombshell on us and you just glossed over it, and I got to come back. You say nothing sweet, and in particular, you mentioned that just because you use a sweetener like I'm going to say aspartame or sucralose or any of those, that it's a hormonal response. That the taste of something sweet in the mouth, the body doesn't go through the chemistry to say, hey, am I being tricked, or is this real sugar? It's saying hormonally, you're going to release the insulin based on what the experience is as you're eating the food, and if it tastes sweet, whether it's chemically a carbohydrate that you can burn, or it's a chemical that you can't, your pancreas can't tell the difference. Am I getting this right?
That is absolutely correct. We have insulin, but insulin is released in 2 stages. One is so-called store insulin, and then insulin in response to food being absorbed through alimentary canal, meaning through your intestines. And stored insulin is released in response to an act of eating itself or in response to taste. So anytime you taste anything sweet, a stored insulin will be released long before this specific food or those specific foods will actually will enter your small intestine for the absorption. And that's what causes damages, because if you do consume artificial sweeteners or something sweet, and stored insulin is being released. Insulin is a appetite-stimulating hormone, and it will essentially trick you into eating more and more. You will have what we know as sugar cravings. Sugar cravings are terrible. People cannot switch to any diet because they crave sugars, and the only way to eliminate this problem is to eliminate everything sweet from your diet, including artificial sweeteners, for anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And after that, you will no longer experience sugar cravings, so it will be much easier to stay on a diet that is low in natural carbohydrates. And incidentally, Dr. Courtney asked me for 5 things. I listed 4. And the thing number 5, raise your thermostat. If it's cold in your office or it's cold in your house, cold stimulates appetite. Cold stimulates accumulation of body fat, because that's how our body protects internal organs. So you become a thermos to yourself, and your rate of metabolism in cold environments drops down tremendously, and while appetite goes up, so you set yourself up for a weight gain. And I was always quite puzzled, Dr. Courtney, why practically all doctors and all nurses who work in a hospital, and they work long shifts, very hard, all day, standing up, walking, talking, running, and almost every single person working in a hospital is overweight. And I figured it out. Thermostats in a hospital set to very low temperatures because doctors and nurses from the extensive workload perspire, so the thermostats are set to about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. It's way too low, and that's why they gain weight, even though most of them consume healthy diets and don't overeat. That's my discovery. That's my Nobel Prize.
That is a door prize for that one, huh? No, I'm telling you, the thing about the sweet, you just ruined the entire diet industry in terms of an industry, because it's all based on, well, I'll have this diet Coke here,
Exactly.
and I'll be okay because there's no calories, there's no carbs, there's no anything. You mentioned something that I believe is the biggest impact of all the things you've ever said. This one has opened my eyes up in a way that it's never been presented to me like this before. And to our listeners, I'm sure this is a big issue.
And I wish to add that people in Pittsburgh are very, very lucky because they have your show and because you are so open-minded and you've seen it right away. That's what a great physician is all about, a teacher and a physician.
Oh, that is just a monumental statement to savor for quite a while. Limit the fiber. Get a book on carbohydrates. Nothing sweet. Limit your fiber intake. How many grams of fiber did you want to keep this to? Below 20 or 30 or something like that?
You don't really need any fiber in your diet because a fiber is undigestible substance. It doesn't do anything. A fiber is essentially a palliative substitute for dealing with constipation, and the rates of fiber in the United States happens along in parallel with the rates of a profound use of antibiotics. And unfortunately, antibiotics, when they used to save people's lives, they also demolish your intestinal, your gut flora. And unfortunately, when you don't have a gut flora, the morphology of stools is compromised. And so at one point or another, regardless of age, you may develop some problems. And obviously, lifestyle, just a city dweller's lifestyle is not conducive to having normal bowel movements. And so that's how fiber came into prominence. In most cultures, you take a culture like Japan, European cultures, France, they don't even know what it is like. Fiber consumption, intentional fiber consumption specifically for that. Fiber is not a health food there. Fiber is a menace there. In France, in Italy, if you have a French or Italian heritage, when you were young, probably your mom was spinning your apples. And then if you would ask her, why are you skinning my apples? She said, you cannot have the skins. They're very dangerous. Today, people are intentionally consumed the skins, either directly or indirectly. So fiber is pretty bad. And if you consume a normal diet, a regular diet from normal, natural food, you probably get 5-10 grams of fiber. You shouldn't be concerned about any fiber coming from normal foods. I'm only referring to a fiber specifically added to food, so-called fiber-fortified foods such as cereals with bran or whole bread with added bran. That's where you run into harm. Or if you take metamucil or something like that, a fiber laxative.
Sure. And the one, another bombshell, I think, that sort of defies the advice given by the medical profession was this issue of limiting the amount of intake of water. I think that there's not a doctor going that would have come up with that as a recommendation. They say drink 8, you already hit it. You said 8 glasses of water a day or something like that, and that's pretty much the way the medical profession has approached the issue of hydration. You say not so. What? Because you can disturb the chemistry so easily by consuming this water. Your electrolytes would be flushed out. It would be recording as a much lower level than it actually was. And this would throw into play a lot of hormonal mechanisms that otherwise would have been left alone. Is that what you mean to say?
That is absolutely correct. If you overconsume fluids, your electrolytes indeed go out of whack, and that sets up a whole bunch of chemical reactions and endocrine reactions, and that includes your appetite because you need to restore those lost electrolytes. That stimulates your organs, especially kidneys, working overtime. And in fact, and a most profound problem, especially for women because of lactation issues, is it leads to a profound loss of calcium and magnesium from your body, because the only way to compensate for lost electrolytes is to take those minerals out of your bones and restore them in your blood. And so that's a very, very severe problem. And in fact, if you open up any medical reference or any primer on human physiology, it says that total human need per day is maybe about 1.5 or 1.5 liters of water. The rest of the water comes from oxidation processes that take place in the body. And unfortunately, people interpreted this incorrectly, saying that if our overall need in water about 2 liters a day, then we need to take 8 glasses. But they forgot that they already 80 to 90% of every single food that you're consuming is water, and people don't count beverages as water. So even if you consume beer or you consume wine or you consume a cup of tea or coffee, it's also water. It's 99% water. And so our average American woman is consuming about 3.5 liters of water. Average American man anywhere from 2.5 to 4 liters, and that leads to a lot of problems. And that's why we're having such an epidemic. We have osteoporosis and osteomalacia of epidemic proportions in this country.
Another blockbuster statement. I think about the... Go ahead. Please finish your point.
This is the subject of my book, 5 Minutes, and the first 2 chapters specifically dedicated to this water overconsumption and fiber overconsumption. And in fact, I've seen some physicians, especially like Dr. Vail, very prominent one, he read the book and he went on the record saying, do not overconsume water.
Now, before I let any more time pass, and literally with a couple minutes left to go, I would be remiss if I didn't allow you, and please take it every time you need, to tell our listeners how to get a hold. You write books. This is your main source of income now since you got out of the tech industry, and you have written quite a few, and up and coming there'll be more. Tell our listeners how to find out more about what Konstantin Monostyrsky has written and all the other things that are found to be on your website and so forth. How do they get a hold of your stuff?
Thank you, Dr. Courtney. Well, I have, I wrote altogether 4 books, 2 in Russian. Unfortunately, you cannot...
Spare me on the Russian edition, okay.
Yes, and 2 in English. One is called 5 Minutes. It is available on Amazon.com, 5 Minutes, either in Kindle format or on paper. Very, very easy read, specifically written for lay audience, has no medical terminology. At the same time, every single medical claim is referenced by mainstream source, so you can safely take this book to your doctor, or to your dietitian, or to your nutritionist, and after they will read it, they will have nothing. They will really have no arguments against the arguments made in the book. And it is a very helpful book for people affected by major digestive disorders, be it ulcer or ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease or irritable bowel syndrome or inflammatory bowel disease. And it is essentially reading for anyone wanting to lose weight or to recover from diabetes if you're on a high-fiber diet. My second book is called Gut Sense, and it started as a book dealing in general with every single digestive disorders, but at one point or another, it actually changed more toward constipation, and so subtitle is How to Reverse and Prevent Constipation and Irregularity in Children and Adults. And this book is available, full content is free of charge on my website. And also, in addition to the full text of the book, there is a tremendous amount of additional information that dealing with all the peripheral issues, in particular with the issues of colon cancer and colonoscopy. Our site is gutsense.org, GUTSENSE.org, or fiberminutes.com will take you to the same place, or just type Konstantin Monostyrsky. Well, from
No, I think that forget about that way of doing it.
yeah. But type 5 minutes of Gut Sense and Google it, and you'll be there.
Absolutely wonderful. Okay. Yeah, sure. I did want to miss it. We've got about a minute to go. So, up and coming, please tell us the book that is in the offing and that is coming around the corner is what's called the Performance, Nutrition for Performance or whatever. Give us an idea, because we're going to have to bring you back on the show. Absolutely.
Performance Nutrition, the art of eating without harm. And I think this would be the pinnacle of my writings, and I really look forward to finishing this book, and it should be available sometime in April.
So you in April? Oh, so when you went to Florida, you actually did finish that doggone thing, didn't you?
Oh, I wrote an outline. I went to Florida to take a sabbatical, to get away from day-to-day routine and to figure out what I need to do, because I have so many projects and so many concepts and so much of the background material and research written, and I just couldn't focus. And so I needed the time away without a computer, without anybody around me, and I just clicked. Performance Nutrition, the art of eating without harm. And that's what my next book is going to be.
Okay. Well, you've got a promise to come back to talk about it. We, of course, we communicate by emails literally weekly, so I'll let our audience know what's happening in the Konstantin Monostyrsky medical saga, and then you promise to come back. And Performance Nutrition, interesting title. All right, folks, there you have it. We got bongos in the background, signaling our time out here. A monumental show today. Major league concepts brought to the forefront that I've never heard before. Hope you enjoyed it. Konstantin, thank you very much. Until Wednesday, this is Dr. Dennis Courtney with Konstantin Monostyrsky saying so long for AM Impact on Your Health.
Goodbye, everybody.
AM Impact on Your Health is sponsored by Dennis J. Courtney, M.D., Director of the Courtney Medical Group, located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray, Pennsylvania. For more information or to make an appointment, call 724-942-3002. That's 724-942-3002 for Dennis J. Courtney, M.D.
KHB reminds you, children are naturally curious, so follow their lead. When you talk to your child, you build vocabulary. Learning starts before school does. For more tips, go to bornlearning.org.
Whether you are a muscle man and spend hours pumping iron or